Hi, everyone. We're going to talk today about ergonomics, right? So this is in Chapter 13, Section 2, Preventing Accidents and Injuries. So ergonomics is an applied science to promote the safety and well-being of a person by adapting the environment and using techniques to prevent injuries. In healthcare, this is a huge deal because it costs the company a lot of money to pay for the healthcare and the treatment for injuries when people experience them at work, right? So that's what workman's comp insurance is for, but they pay a lot of money to carry that. Also, if an employee gets injured at work, that's also a potential for a lawsuit. And also, you don't want to be the one getting injured because you could potentially lose your ability to actually have a job and be able to function and work. So I found this great video that highlights healthcare and ergonomics, and I think it's good.
Oh, my back. Oops. When you think of the hazards healthcare workers face every day performing either major or often even simple tasks in awkward or narrow spaces, it is no surprise to know that the healthcare industry is a high-risk industry for musculoskeletal disorders, or MSDs, including slips, trips and falls. Hello, I'm Dr. Catherine Murphy, and I'd like to share with you some of the hard facts on the strain ergonomic-related injuries have on our profession. How significant is that level of strain? In the US, healthcare has more reported injuries than construction. In fact, the reported rate of ergonomic injury in the US is almost 8 nurses per 100 full-time equivalent healthcare workers. According to the 2005 European Survey on Working Conditions, more than a quarter of workers in the health and social work fields reported suffering from back pain. In Australia, of the 17,500 serious workers' compensation claims reported amongst healthcare workers in 2009-2010, more than half were muscular stress related, while 18% were for slips, trips and falls. The nature of nursing work probably means even higher rates amongst this particular group. In Korea, one study at a major hospital revealed that more than 90% of nurses reported an MSD at anybody's site, while nurses who undertook manual handling of patients were 7.2 times more likely than non-nurses to report an MSD. This same study suggests that Korean nurses, when compared to their international colleagues, are likely to have the heaviest MSD burden. Although it is important to appreciate that globally, MSDs among nurses range from 72% to 94%, with more than a third of all nurses reporting lower back pain, regardless of their country. Clearly, whether ergonomic injuries are a result of lifting and handling patients, overexertion, standing in one spot for too long in the OR, tripping over cords on the floor, or even slipping on wet floors during high fluid loss surgery. The strain on our industry is felt all around the world. MSDs impact both the healthcare worker and their hospitals. Even patients are inadvertently affected. Undoubtedly, the human, financial, organisational and individual costs are substantial. For example, it is estimated that the direct and indirect cost of back injuries and other MSDs amount to more than $20 billion in the US, while every year nurses in the US lose more than 750,000 workdays. In Europe, one source reports up to 7 million lost workdays, perhaps costing as much as €710 million. More concerning, however, is that depending on the nature of the injury, the valuable skills of nurses are often lost forever. The US reports nearly 20% of nurses either change or leave their jobs due to an MSD. As a profession, can we really afford to ignore this? If you answered with a resounding no, I recommend you adopt a multimodal approach to reducing the risk of ergonomic-related injuries. This involves firstly assessing and reviewing administrative controls, like policies and standard operating procedures that may or may not be in place. Secondly, it means considering the introduction of new tools, devices or equipment. And thirdly, It means ensuring workers are familiar with and properly trained in their correct application and use. In laboratory-based studies, experts have demonstrated that ergonomic devices reduce risk in injury. Their impact in clinical settings is less well demonstrated. However, in one program in 86 hospitals, researchers reported that when ergonomic consultation and financial support for purchasing ergonomic devices used for patient handling and lifting were provided, over a 2-year period, the median MSD rate halved. This research indicates that ergonomic consultation and financial support for purchasing ergonomic equipment can be beneficial and lead to impressive reductions in MSD rates. Hopefully, the facts presented today and these promising results will encourage you to act now. Don't continue to tolerate the burden of MSDs in your workplace. Find out more about the combination already available to make.
All right. So that talks about some of the risks in healthcare with lifting patients. So there's ways that we can reduce, uh, injuries in the healthcare setting, and a lot of it can be just thinking ahead at what you need before you need it. Also, how are you going to need to help the patient? Is there any equipment that you need ahead of time? Okay. Now, some other components of ergonomics that we need to think about is correct placement of furniture and equipment. All right. For furniture, do we have to squeeze around a couch to get through a doorway from the hallway to the living room? Um, is there a rug somewhere that's easily tripped over? Do we have a cord for one of our pieces of equipment that is out in the middle of the floor that you could trip over? Okay. Um, you got to look around and think about the things that you probably wouldn't think about on a daily basis. All right. We need training in muscle movements. All right. So, what's the proper way we should be lifting? Are we using the proper muscles when we're lifting correctly? Are we going to try to avoid repetitive motions? So if we have to pick things up and put them down over and over and over again, maybe it's something where we need straps, or maybe a draw sheet would be effective. Okay. Also, an awareness of the environment to prevent injury. So, is there some liquid on the floor that someone could slip on? Um, is there going to be enough room to get a patient rolled to get onto a sheet draw to make it easier to move them? Okay. Ergonomics really looks at the prevention of accidents and injuries, because once they happen, there's really no taking them back. Okay. And usually, once somebody gets a back injury, their back has been weakened, potentially permanently for the rest of their life. All right. Ergonomics focuses on the worker and what's immediately around them. They also have to educate and train their healthcare workers on safety regulations and what would be the appropriate steps to follow to keep themselves safe. Seems like every cool application we get to do in medicine, there's 5 safety rules to follow for each one. And then also, not only do we have to worry about the healthcare workers being safe, we have to worry about the patient being safe. As a healthcare worker, we have a legal and moral responsibility to protect the patient from harm or any sort of injury. So that concludes this video on ergonomics. Okay, it's all about having a safe environment, how to think ahead about how to structure your environment, All right. So you could be looking at just your desk. Say you're doing homework a lot and you're spending all your time looking down at your computer. Well, after you look down at your computer for so long, your neck starts to hurt, your back starts to hurt, your shoulders hurt, right? How can you make that easier on yourself? The ergonomics to improve that situation would be to lift your computer up. Sometimes these are simple little things to do, and it can ease the burden on our bodies.